Hello and welcome back. My name is Tiia and this is the Writer Diary, where I am talking about me getting back into writing after a 15-year hiatus and all the challenges that I am experiencing while doing so. This week we want to talk about a topic that has nothing to do directly with writing or with the process of writing itself, but with the surrounding of writing, in this case, publishing. This week I have been researching, after thinking for quite a while, how to actually handle publishing my texts, because I have been writing poetry now for half a year and I have been publishing my poetry on my own website and on my own blog, and I have made videos and reels and short videos about my poetry where I'm reading my poetry. But this is all fine if you want to stay a hobby writer, but my long-term plan is to not stay a hobby writer and turn this again into a profession like I did years ago. The reason why I don't want to go the hobby-only approach is because I want to dedicate serious time into writing. And if you dedicate serious time into an activity, you kind of have to justify spending that time in that activity, because we all know time is money. And while I am not someone who's aiming to get rich, I kind of aim to have food and to have enough money at the end of the month if something happens. So for me, it's just like I want to have my basic needs fulfilled. And if writing can help me do that, I'm all in for it. I told you before in an earlier episode that I have my background, my professional writing background in journalism. And journalism is a very challenging area of writing, but it's super fulfilling. It gives you the sense of purpose, the sense of helping society, informing society, and help putting things into perspective that might be complicated to understand or that people maybe don't even look into by themselves. Now, the contrast to creative writing is crazy to me, because journalism always felt easy to me because it is easier. You have your facts that you talk about. You have the very clear structure of how to write a journalistic article. It is just a learned skill. You can look at an article and you can say, oh, this is a good article or this is a bad article. But when it comes to creative writing, it's so much harder because it's much more about your personal style, finding your own voice, being vulnerable. And there is, like I said before, there is no clear rule book. It is pretty much about finding the overlap between what you want to write and how you want to write, and finding the people who want to read what you're writing. And that has been really hard for me. And with journalism, not only making the articles or writing the articles felt easier, but it also felt easier to get those articles to the reader. You would just contact magazines and publishers directly. And because the group of journalists is so much smaller than the group of writers in total, which makes sense because journalism is a subcategory of writers, you would usually find someone who wants to publish your article if your article is well crafted. And with my journalistic approach, I was like, hey, that's probably very similar with creative writing. And it couldn't be further from the truth. I have been researching the past week how the normal publishing routes for creative writing are working. And it seems like there are different approaches, and each of these approaches also has the risk of you getting scammed and you getting ripped off, which means you have to be very careful. The thing is, the creative writing space seems to be very overcrowded. I feel like a lot of people have returned or have started to write and do creative writing and trying to pursue this dream, which I totally understand. But this also caused a lot of places that would offer to publish your texts, your short stories, your poems, get overrun by those writers. Also, one thing that I have seen, which is not normal in journalism, at least it wasn't when I was writing journalism, was having agents and agencies who would pitch your texts, your stories to publishers. And even here, finding the right agency, not getting scammed, not getting ripped off, and having an agency that actually believes in you and wants to see you being published seems also be almost impossible. And then I also see something like smaller publishers having contests where you can send them your short story and your poem, and then it might be published in a collection to a specific topic or just a collection in general, which in itself also has the risk of you getting ripped off because sometimes they want money from you for you handing it in. And I was already told, hands off anything that wants to have money from you beforehand, which I think I would have not probably fallen for anyway, but I can see if someone is like really desperate getting published that they would go this route and be like, I'd rather pay than have to compete with other people. But then I see the problem in that case that those contests does not give you a guarantee to be published. And all of these contests, at least from what I have seen, want to have a unique text and want to have a original story, which means you spend time on writing original content, which you then hand in, and then the deadline for it, when you find out if it gets published or not, is maybe, let's say, half a year in the future. And in that time, you're basically spending time on writing for no guarantees. Where I'm not sure if that is maybe a little bit of a waste of time. But then another thought I had was maybe this might be a way for a publisher to find your work and read your work and maybe see more in your work, even though it's never a guarantee. And most of the time they probably get so much that they cannot putting that into consideration. But it's another point. And then there is also the alternative method, monetizing your work by going through things like Patreon. And I do have a Patreon where I am publishing texts and where I'm including my community in my whole creation process. And it is a very good way of monetizing early on if you have very loyal fans and very loyal supporters who want to see you thrive. And I'm very thankful because I have a bunch of people who are very invested in supporting me. But long term, I also need to keep in mind that having like this bubble where I publish my texts does work, but it does not help me getting my name out. And I think ultimately, if you want to make your writing a long-term investment of your time and maybe like have it pay some of your bills, you kind of want to have your name out there. You kind of want to be known, and keeping everything in a small bubble, it might be counterproductive in this case. One thing I do love about Patreon, though, is having direct contact with your readers, having direct contact with people who love your work. And I know the bigger you get and the more known you get, at some point you lose this direct contact because you just can't have it. And right now I really enjoy talking to people. We also have a Discord now where we are talking and where we exchange ideas. And also I have writers that joined the Discord. So right now I really enjoy having this direct connection to people. And I think everyone who starts writing should aim to create like a small, loyal community with people who support them and who believe in them. And it doesn't even have to have a monetary background, and it doesn't have to have a monetary motivation. But just having your people who are there and who motivate you and who can lift you up when you're feeling a little bit down, it's worth so much. But this also comes back to the question, what does success mean? What does publish mean? And how important is it really? I know in journalism, being published on paper, having a physical object of your writing usually weighs very heavy because especially journalism is a very conservative medium, and how you are perceived by colleagues and how you're perceived by magazines often depends on how much printed articles you have published. I could tell that the payment I got for articles went up significantly once I had my first printed articles out in the wild. And I can imagine that this is very similar for writing as well, that a printed book or a printed story is much more worth than if you publish it digitally. And I think this is also the reason why there are so many scams out there that lure you into getting your stuff printed, because we all know that it's such a significant step in your writing career to have something on paper. So this whole research for me is I feel I have not finished this yet. I feel there are probably more ways in order to get my texts out, my voice out, and to get a foot into being published and being or putting my name out. And it's exciting to look into it because it's just something new I learned, but it's also terrifying because it's so much more complicated than journalism is and journalism was. My journalist brain really wants to see a clear strategy, like this one path that I have to go and where I know that it works. But I know that this one path does not exist. And a lot is having contacts and a lot is just knowing people. And if you don't have contacts and you don't know people, then the path to getting published is probably a labyrinth, and I probably have to be okay with that. So did my journalist background help me or hinder me in this case? I think both. I think there is not a clear yes or no, or it helped me or it hindered me, because first of all, I think my journalism background gives me a lot of confidence and me believing in my work, because with the publishing history I have, it's not really about me not knowing if I can write or not. It is just finding the right people who want to read my stuff. But it also hindered me in a way that I thought it was way easier, that I underestimated the paths I have to go. And it could very well be that the paths have been just as easy 15 years ago, because I wasn't in creative writing 15 years ago, at least not in a professional sense. So it could very well be that journalism is just as complicated now as well. But my expectations, how easy the path might be, were definitely very much shaped by my journalistic background and my experiences I made in that regard. So looking into my whole writing journey so far, looking now already into the publishing realm, is probably a good thing, because I don't spend too much time in this limbo of I am writing and I don't know what to do with my writing, but I have a clear plan in my head where I want to go. I just need to find the way how to get there. And this desire to have more, to do more, to feel more, for me personally is also a sign how serious I take this. And that it's not just a fleeting interest I have, but that it is something where I see myself in, like this popular, where do you see yourself in 5 years, or where do you see yourself in 10 years, that it is something where I see myself and where I also think I belong. But I will keep researching, and if you have any more knowledge about the process, because you're either already in the process of getting published, or maybe you have found ways where it's like super easy, or where you have found ways where you think it is not as rocky as the ways I found, feel free, let me know, because I'm always interested in the different approaches people take and maybe finding a way that suits me. Also, one thing, because I don't know when the next episode comes out after this, that I can tell you is, if you are familiar with Humble Bundle, it's an organization that offers bundles of books and games and software, limited time for different topics and different hobbies, then you should have a look at Humble Bundle. You just Google Humble Bundle. Have a look at their book bundles right now, because they have 44 books about writing, about becoming a writer, and all kind of things like poetry, fiction, nonfiction. 44 books for $17. It's ebooks. And I cannot tell you now how good of a quality these books are, but I think for $17 getting 44 books to the whole topic of writing is probably not a bad deal. When I saw it myself, I got them immediately, and I'm now just going through them one by one to see if there is something I might be interested in. I will put the link into the description, so feel free to check it out, or just like Google Humble Bundle. I just checked. There's like 18 days left on the offer. And you're also supporting charity while doing it. So it's either way, it's like a good cause. And if you get something out of it, I mean, why not? That is all I wanted to tell you. Let me know your opinions in the comments. Feel free, or reach out to me. And thank you for listening. I hope to see you in the next episode. Goodbye.